The Shadow in the Woods. Back in the late 90s, I was a scrawny kid growing up in the quiet suburbs of Willow Creek, a small town nestled in upstate New York. Dense forests surrounded our neighborhood, their winding trails and hidden creeks calling to me every weekend. I wasn't exactly Mr. Popular at Lincoln High. I had a few buddies, Jake, Mike, and Ethan, but I always felt like the odd man out, tagging along but never truly part of their inner circle. One of those guys was Ethan, a hulking senior who towered over us by at least 6 inches. With shaggy brown hair and a bit of a gut, he wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed. Rumor had it he'd been held back a year. But he was strong, the kind of guy who could bench press you without breaking a sweat. One chilly Friday in late October, as I trudged along the sidewalk leading out of the school parking lot, Ethan jogged up to me, his heavy steps crunching the fallen leaves. "Hey, Chris," he said, his voice low and conspiratorial. "Mike found this creepy old house deep in the woods. We're all checking it out tonight. You in?" My heart skipped a beat. They never invited me to stuff like this. Trying to play it cool, I shrugged and said, "Yeah, sure. Count me in." Ethan grinned and told me to meet him at 8 p.m. at the corner of Main and Elm Street, right by the edge of Blackthorn Woods. I was thrilled, but kept it under wraps. Didn't want to seem too eager. After dinner, I mumbled to my mom that I was hanging out with friends, grabbed my backpack, and slipped out the door. Back then, my parents were pretty lax. They didn't ask for details, and I didn't offer any. My bag held a flashlight, an extra hoodie, and a couple of beers I'd swiped from my dad's stash, hoping to impress the guys. The air was crisp as I walked to the meeting spot, the excitement buzzing in my chest. I got there early, but Ethan was already waiting, leaning against a street lamp. "Where's everyone else?" I asked, scanning the empty corner. "They're coming," he said, waving me off. "Let's go." Confused, I followed him into the woods. The sun was dipping below the horizon, and the thick canopy swallowed what little light remained. No moon, no stars, just darkness pressing in. I flicked on my flashlight, its beam cutting through the shadows. Ethan, meanwhile, pulled out a machete, slashing at stray branches with unnecessary force. It was overkill for these woods, but I didn't say anything. We walked for half an hour, the temperature dropping fast. I zipped up my hoodie, my breath visible in the chilly air. Ethan barely spoke, which was odd. He wasn't my favorite of the group, and I wasn't his. So why had he invited me? The deeper we went, the more uneasy I felt. There was no sign of an abandoned house, no sign of the others. My gut churned. "Hey man, how much farther?" I asked, my voice shakier than I'd intended. "Maybe we should head back." Ethan brushed me off. "It's close. Relax." But we were lost, wandering aimlessly through the dense trees. Finally, we stumbled into a small clearing. A faint trail led to a fire pit, surrounded by crushed beer cans and trash. Someone had been here recently. Ethan stopped dead in his tracks and turned to face me, his eyes glinting in the flashlight's glow. The machete in his hand caught the light, its blade flashing ominously. "Is this it?" I mumbled, my voice barely audible. He didn't answer, just stared, unblinking. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. My heart pounded. Something was wrong, really wrong. I was about to speak when Ethan lunged, tackling me to the ground. The air rushed out of my lungs as he pinned me, the cold steel of his machete pressing against my throat. His flashlight clattered to the dirt beside us. "Please, Ethan. Let me go," I begged, my voice cracking. He raised the blade, His face twisted with something dark and unreadable. In a split-second decision, I flicked off my flashlight, then reached for his, plunging us into total darkness. The sudden blackout threw him off, and I wriggled free, scrambling to my feet. Ethan's heavy breathing filled the void, but he didn't move. Maybe he was disoriented too. Maybe... I stumbled blindly through the woods, branches clawing at my face. Ethan's screams echoed behind me, raw and animalistic. I realized he must not have found his flashlight. Otherwise, he'd be chasing me with it. I kept moving, heart hammering, until his voice faded into the distance. When I felt safe enough, I switched my flashlight back on, and by some miracle found a trail. It took over an hour, but I finally emerged onto Main Street, shaking and soaked in sweat. Glancing down, I noticed the wet stain on my jeans. I pissed myself in terror. Instead of going home, I stumbled to a nearby park, cracked open the beers, and drank them both, the bitter taste grounding me. The rain started as I sat there, turning into a downpour by the time I dragged myself home. My family was asleep, thank God. I didn't want to explain my state. I crept upstairs, collapsed onto my bed, and passed out. The next morning, I woke with a splitting headache and scrapes on my arms, proof it wasn't a nightmare. Stepping outside into the wet grass, it hit me. Ethan might still be out there, lost in the cold rain without a light. But fear and guilt kept me silent. I didn't tell a soul. By Monday, the whole town was buzzing. Ethan was missing. Since he lured me out there to kill me, I knew he hadn't told anyone about our plan. I stayed quiet, terrified of getting in trouble. It wasn't until spring that they found his body not far from that clearing. The police ruled it an accident. Exposure, maybe. No one ever suspected me. For years, guilt gnawed at me. I was only 14, shaken to my core, and the thought of calling for help hadn't crossed my mind until it was too late. Now, at 25, I've made peace with it. But I still wonder if I owe Ethan's family the truth. Would it bring them closure or just more pain? The boy on the roof. When I was 14, my family uprooted from Willow Creek to a house plunked in the middle of a sprawling cornfield in rural Ohio. A narrow dirt road stretched from the highway to our front door, with towering stalks hemming us in on all sides. I was a bit of a fitness nut. Jogging was my escape, and I took my dog Rusty out twice a day, rain or shine. Our new place was a 2-story farmhouse, and my bedroom window overlooked the highway. After unpacking, I noticed a dirt track across the road snaking into the corn. It looked perfect for running, so that afternoon, around 5:30, I leashed up Rusty and headed out to explore. The path was tight, barely wide enough for a car, with corn rising high above my head. After 15 minutes, I could no longer see the highway behind me. The track curved slightly, and in the distance, I spotted the roof of a house poking over the stalks. As I got closer, I saw something odd. A little boy, maybe 5 or 6, perched on the roof in a red shirt. How the hell did he get up there, I wondered. Did his parents know? The house was clearly 2 stories, its roof barely visible above the corn. Uneasy, I called Rusty back from where he'd bounded ahead and turned around. I wasn't about to risk trespassing or running into unfriendly dogs. Back home, I asked my dad if he knew who lived across the road. Nobody, he said, barely looking up from the TV. That's an old storage shed for farm equipment, been abandoned for years. I frowned. Dad, I saw a kid on the roof. He gave me a skeptical look, like I was spinning a yarn. Confused, I started to doubt myself. Had I imagined it? My 12-year-old sister Lily overheard us, towel drying her hair. Lily, come jogging with me tomorrow morning, I pleaded. I need to know if I'm losing it. She rolled her eyes, but agreed. The next day, we left Rusty at home and set out. As we neared the spot where the roof came into view, there was no boy in sight. "Let's go to the house," Lily said, bold as ever. I hesitated but followed. Up close, the place was a wreck. A 2-story relic streaked with black like it had survived a fire. The front had 3 gaping holes where windows used to be, and the stairs were at the back, near a murky pond. Old tires, rusted tractors, and junk littered the yard. It screamed abandoned, just like Dad said. "You feel that?" I whispered to Lily. "Something's off." She nodded, her bravado fading. Then she gasped, her voice trembling. "Tori, is that the boy?" She pointed to a smashed window on the ground floor. Inside, in a dim room, sat the same little boy in the red shirt, staring blankly. We froze, then bolted back to the road, hearts racing. At home, we burst in, babbling to our parents about what we'd seen. Dad laughed it off. "I told you, no one lives there." Mom just shook her head, dismissing us as dramatic teens. Determined to prove we weren't crazy, Lily and I went back that afternoon, Rusty in tow. The boy was gone, but Rusty went nuts, yanking free and charging up the rickety back stairs to the house. "Great," I groaned, my stomach twisting. We crept up after him, the stairs creaking underfoot. Inside, the air was thick with dust and decay. Lily found Rusty in an open room, staring at a massive cardboard box, nearly as tall as me, stuffed with old videotapes. "What the hell?" Lily muttered, reaching for one. Before she could grab it, heavy footsteps thundered from the front of the house like someone was sprinting toward us. We screamed, grabbed Rusty, and ran, the rain starting as we fled. Halfway down the road, I glanced back. A large, shadowy figure stood in one of the window gaps, watching us. Soaked and breathless, we told our parents everything. Dad, intrigued by the tapes, suggested we drive to the house to check it out. Despite our terror, Lily and I went along. The dirt road was eerie in the dark, the car's headlights barely piercing the gloom. We pulled up to the house, its silhouette looming like something out of a horror flick. Suddenly, a gunshot cracked through the night, so close it felt like it was fired right beside us. Dad slammed the car into reverse, but then froze, staring ahead. The road was clean from the earlier rain, no tracks but ours. Yet there, sitting upright on our tire marks, was a single bullet shell. We peeled out and never went back. To this day, I wonder what was on those tapes and who, or what, was guarding them. The glasses in the farmhouse. In the summer of '95, when I was 12, my small town of Cedar Grove, Iowa, was rocked by the disappearance of my classmate Tommy. He was a nerdy kid with thick, taped-up glasses, the only one in our grade who could work the new library computers. Everyone liked him, even if he was a bit awkward. One day he was walking home through the woods with a couple of friends when they spotted a strange man lurking in the bushes. They didn't think much of it and kept going. But when they reached the street, Tommy turned one way while the others went another. That was the last anyone saw of him. The police combed the woods for months but found nothing. Our neighborhood was on lockdown. I wasn't allowed out of sight for half a year. Life eventually moved on, but Tommy's absence lingered. 4 years later, I was 16, a sophomore at Jefferson High, about 15 minutes from Cedar Grove. I still hung out with my old friends, Nate and Ryan. One Saturday, we took our bikes out to explore the sprawling canola fields near our town. Beyond the fields were a few old farmhouses, relics of small family farms bought out by big corporations. Most stood empty, falling apart. We passed a few when Nate suggested checking one out. Ryan and I agreed, even though trespassing could get us in hot water. We picked a large farmhouse ahead, its wooden siding weathered to gray, the roof missing half its shingles. Boarded up windows and warning signs plastered the place. But there was no fence. The front door was padlocked tight, so we circled to the back. That door was locked too, but Nate noticed something. The padlock was cut clean through. "Lucky break," he said, swinging the door open. We stepped into a kitchen frozen in time. 1970s wallpaper, a dusty coffee cup on the table, and a thick layer of dust coating everything. Our sneakers left prints as we moved. Ryan and I wandered into the living room, where slivers of light seeped through gaps in the plywood. Nate veered off toward a bedroom. The place was creepy but not terrifying, until Nate called out, his voice urgent. "Guys, get over here." We found him in a small room, maybe an office, with a rusted bed frame in the corner. He pointed to the floor. There, covered in dust, was a pair of glasses, broken in the middle, held together with tape. My stomach dropped. We all thought the same thing. Tommy. Without a word, we backed out, leaving the house as we found it. On the ride home, I couldn't shake the image of that cut lock. Someone had been in there before us. Had it been Tommy? I told my parents everything, and though they thought I was exaggerating, they called the police. I gave the cops the house's location, but wasn't allowed to go back. A few days later, I got the news. The police found the glasses and a jacket confirmed to be Tommy's. It was the first lead in years. They searched the house and fields for days, but his body was never found. I still think of him whenever I pass one of those crumbling farmhouses, wondering what happened that day in the woods. The tunnel. Haunting. I'm a hiker, always chasing new trails around Auckland, New Zealand. One evening, I decided to tackle a track I'd never done before. A path winding down from a visitor center atop a hill, past an abandoned railway once used to showcase glowworms. Now, it's just a rusted skeleton, forgotten by time. It was 4:30 p.m., the sky dimming, but I figured I'd explore a bit and loop back to my car. About 200 meters from the visitor center, I reached an old train tunnel, abandoned for 3 years. It was short, maybe 500 meters, but dark as pitch. Armed with my lantern, I ventured in, my wet boots slapping against the ground. Halfway through, I froze. Over the echo of my footsteps, I heard breathing, close. Too close. The hairs on my neck stood up. I spun around, lantern swinging, but saw nothing except the faint glow of the tunnel's entrance. I started walking again, faster now. The breathing returned, followed by a low, rasping whisper. "Get out." My blood ran cold. I didn't need to be told twice. I sprinted toward the exit, the tunnel's mouth growing larger. Footsteps pounded behind me, gaining. Just as daylight flooded my vision, I tripped, crashing onto my stomach. Pain shot through my shoulder, and for a moment I felt someone hovering over me. My legs refused to move, but I clawed my way up, covered in mud, and stumbled into the open air. Gasping, I limped back to the visitor center and collapsed on a bench, stretching my aching arm. As I caught my breath, I glanced to my left. There, on the platform, stood a man in dirty brown overalls and a tattered white shirt, staring at me. I'm a big guy, but I've never run faster. I dove into my car, heart pounding, and locked the doors. Sitting there, I tried to process it. The tunnel, the whisper, the figure. It felt like a nightmare, but the mud on my clothes and the ache in my shoulder were real. I could go back, take photos, prove it happened. But honestly, I'm not sure I'll ever set foot on that track again.